Hi there guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Cover Zero show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Hope you've checked out some of the free agency videos from last week. This week we're going to change it up a little bit, doing 10-year franchise reviews. So something a bit different. I'll be going through each individual NFL franchise, calculating how many wins and losses they've had over the last decade, noting any head coaching changes, and reviewing each draft that has occurred in the last 10 years. I have a scoring system attached to that, which I will explain once I get to that point in each video. Hopefully this exercise will sort of demonstrate to people, one, how difficult it is drafting. I knew it was a bit of a crapshoot. This exercise has really shown me how difficult it is, and we should be able to get some idea as to what franchises have been successful in this department, as well as seeing how that's translated to win-loss records and overall team success in the last decade. Now, this episode will be focusing on the team with the first overall pick this upcoming NFL draft, and that team is the Cleveland Browns. So, beginning with the Browns in the last 10 years, they have managed to amass 48 wins and 112 losses. In that time frame, they've not made the playoffs once. The best record they've managed to get is a 10-6 record in the 2007 season. I remember that season. That was the Derek Anderson year, when people thought he was very good that season. There's no denying that. And things appeared to be on the up. Unfortunately for them, since then, it's been nothing but disasters. The best season they've had since being a single 7-9 year 3 seasons ago. The rest of them mainly 3-4-12s, 3-5-11s, a 3-13, and last year's 1-15 record. As anyone who has been watching around, they know there have been a huge amount of coaching changes. So we had Romeo Crennel for the 07 and 08 seasons, then Eric Mangini, then for 09 and 2010, then Pat Shurmur for the 2011 season, then Jimmy Haslam purchased the team. He was fired a few games in. Then we've got Chudzinski in the 2013 season, the 2014 and 15 season, we've got Mike Pettine. And then last season, Hugh Brown's first year with Sashi Brown as the VP and Paul Podesta also overseeing things in Cleveland. So, terrible records, and that has been reflected in what has been the busiest franchise in terms of replacing their head coaches and front office crews, as you may expect. A real contrast to the rest of the AFC North, where those 3 teams have pretty much been the definition of stability. So going to the drafts, just quickly explain my scoring system. I've tried to keep this as simple as possible. Maybe at some point in the future I'll build on this system and do a more detailed version, but for now I just wanted to keep it as simple as possible and maybe work on the system from there. So I will be tallying up rounds 1 through 3. I'll mention each player that has been picked as a first, second or third rounder for the franchise. I'll be allocating whether I believe them to be a solid draft pick, and that will give a score of +1. A reasonable draft pick, which will not do anything for a score, or a bust, which will attribute a score of -1. I will also be mentioning specific players picked in rounds 4 through 7 and designate them as value picks, which will also add a +1. I'm being slightly harsher in my grading of first round draft picks, and that does also account for the position in which they're drafted. To me, a player picked in the top 10 should go on to become one of the better players at that position. Not necessarily a Pro Bowler, but close to it. Someone who's a solid addition to the team. At worst, I'm expecting solid starter status out of a first round pick. Second and third rounders, I'm a little bit more flexible with. Some players, of course, I may assign a grade to, and I don't like adding their score to the team because they may not have had any success with said team and then moved on elsewhere. But unfortunately, it is what it is in regards to that. I will mention those players as I come across them. So, the Cleveland Browns, going back to the 2007 draft first of all, we've got their first round pick, Joe Thomas, at the offensive lineman, with the number 3 overall pick. Now this is one of the easiest ones, an absolute home run. He's been picked 3rd overall, he's made 6 All-Pro teams, 10 Pro Bowls, is going to likely be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Will definitely get in, even if it's not first ballot. Who knows with the Hall of Fame, they can be a bit unpredictable. One of the best players at his position of all time, so that's an easy solid +1 there. They got a second first rounder that year, and that was a trade up to go get Brady Quinn, the quarterback from Notre Dame. He was drafted with the 22nd overall pick, and I think we can all agree that he was a bust. Never really achieved anything in the league, struggled as a starter in the few games he played with Cleveland, never really emerged anywhere else. So that pick goes down as a bust. And then there was a 2nd round pick, Eric Wright, cornerback. Spent a few years with the team, went on to play for the Lions and the Buccaneers. Was a mediocre player, but had a reasonable career for a 2nd rounder, so no score there. The 2008 draft, due to trading the previous year, didn't have any 1st or 2nd or 3rd rounders. They did have a good value pick though. In the 6th round, they picked up nose tackle Tyber Rubin. He's been a solid NFL player throughout his career, had some good years with the Browns. For a 6th round pick, that's fantastic value. That's a value pick, +1 there. Then moving on to the 2009 draft, we've got number 1 overall pick, 1st round pick, 21st overall. Alex Mack, the centre, now playing for the Falcons. This was a solid pick. He's been a Pro Bowl centre throughout his career, been one of the better starters in the league. So that was a solid pick. And then we've got 3 2nd rounders. We've got Brian Robisky and Mohamed Massaquoi, both wide receivers, and linebacker David Vaikun. All 3 of these players busted in the league and didn't do anything. So that's a bit of a disaster there. 2010 draft, we've got for the 1st round Joe Hayden with the 7th overall pick. He's been a solid corner, even if he's not been quite as effective the last couple of seasons, had some injuries, but really when he's been healthy, he's been a Pro Bowl caliber corner. I think that's a solid pick. In the 2nd round, TJ Ward, the safety now playing for the Broncos. He's a very good player, even if he's spent most of his successful years with the Broncos. That was also a solid pick. Then we've got 3 3rd rounders. Montario Hardesty, running back. He was a bust. He didn't achieve anything in the league. And 2 3rds, Sean Laval, the guard, been a mediocre to poor starter, and Colt McCoy, who's been a career backup, but still in the league. Not grading the team up or down for either of these players. They're 3rd rounders. I feel that they've had somewhat reasonable careers, even if Colt McCoy hasn't done anything. Career backup, possibly a reliable backup. I mean, teams see something in him. He's been hopping around the league since. So, not being graded down for either of those. The 2011 draft, 1st round draft pick, Phil Taylor, the nose tackle from Baylor. I just like saying that. 21st overall. He was a bust. Didn't achieve much at all in his time in Cleveland. I believe he's currently out of the league. 2nd round pick, Jabal Sheard. He's had a solid career as a defensive end. Solid pick there, even if, again, he's not spent a lot of time outside of Cleveland. 2nd round pick, Greg Little, the wide receiver. He was a bust. And we've got a pair of value picks in the 4th round, getting Jordan Cameron, the tight end. And in the 5th round, getting Buster Skrine, the defensive back. They have both been solid NFL players. So good value there in the 4th and 5th respectively. Moving on to the 2012 draft. Once again, the Browns were pretty active trading here. Trent Richardson, we're in the first round with the 3rd overall pick. Absolute bust. I mean, a huge bust. They traded up to get him. It was only 1 pick, but he just absolutely has not worked out for them. He's basically out of the league at this point. And Brandon Weeden with the 22nd overall pick, part of the Julio Jones trade. Also an absolute bust. He is also out of the league. Second round, Mitchell Schwartz, the offensive tackle. That's a solid pick. He's had a perfectly reasonable NFL career. And in the 3rd, John Hughes, the defensive tackle. He's had an okay career, not good enough to be solid, but also not poor enough to be considered a bust. Perfectly reasonable there. And in the 4th round, they got Travis Benjamin, who has had a solid career as a return specialist and can chip in at receiver for the teams he's played for. So I've given them a value pick there. It also has to be noted in this one, the supplemental draft, this was the year that they picked up Josh Gordon, which is such a difficult one to classify, of course. You could say a bust. When he's been on the field, he has been fantastic and a clear home run. So this one, I'm just basically not going to score. When the 2 years he played, he was great. Missed the rest of the time. Who knows? He may come back. I doubt it, but just going to leave that one blank. Feel free to adjust my score when I give it at the end if you want, by +1 or -1, depending on your opinion. I don't think it won't have a drastic effect on where they rank. In the 2013 draft, in the 1st round, the team selected Barkevius Mingo with the 6th overall pick. He was a bust. In the 3rd round, some fellow called Lem McFadden. I don't even remember this guy. Linebacker. He is a bust. He's not done anything. 2014 draft. Wow, what a total disaster this one also was. 1st round, 8th overall pick, Justin Gilbert, the cornerback, bust. In the 1st round also, Johnny Manziel, the 22nd overall pick, bust. I don't need to just explain why those guys are bust. They're just clear cut. In the 2nd, Joel Bitonio, the guard. That's a really good pick. Good player. And then in the 3rd, 2 players, Terrence West, the running back, and Chris Kinsey, the linebacker. If contributed, who knows? They could carry on their careers and end up being solid picks. At this point, mediocre. Not going to rate the team up or down for those picks. The 2015 draft, with one of the first picks, Danny Shelton, the nose tackle, at 12. I think he's underachieved at this point. Is looking like a bust, but I'm not going to grade him as one at this point. I still feel like that's too early. And with the 19th pick, Cam Irving, the centre. At this point, I am willing to say that he is a bust. He's been very, very poor and had injury problems, been replaced with JC Tretter this offseason. So I believe that's the team essentially accepting that he is a bust at this point. Doesn't even have a spot at guard anymore, with Bitonio being re-signed and bringing in Zietler. So could potentially be cut. That wouldn't shock me at all. Nate Orchard in the 2nd. He's not done anything yet. The 3rd, Xavier Cooper and Duke Johnson. Cooper has done absolutely nothing. If you can't get into that rotation, that would concern me. So I've got him down as a bust. And Duke Johnson, hard to say at this point in time. And the 2016 draft, with the most recent draft, a lot of players I'm not giving a grade to because, of course, they haven't had time for me to make a decision on them. Some I have, some I'm willing to say, yep, that's a solid pick at this point. Most of them will just be a case of the jury is still out. I think 1 or 2 seasons is often not going to be enough to grade a player. With the 15th pick, Corey Coleman, the wide receiver. The 2nd pick, second round draft pick, Emmanuel Ogba, the defensive end. I quite like this guy, but again, I'm not going to say anything with regards to whether I believe him to be a bust at this point or not. The third, Carl Nassib, the defensive end. High upside, bit of risk there. That's why he fell to where he did. Who knows at this point. And Cody Kessler, the quarterback, showed some size last year. Been at least a solid backup. Could potentially be a low end starter. And there's another third here. He's mediocre. And I can't actually read my handwriting there. That's what I get. But yeah, certainly one of the poorer lists. So just a quick breakdown there. I've got a grand total of 7 solid or home run picks that score a positive of 1 and 4 value picks for a total of 11 on that side of things. And in terms of total busts, I have 13, giving this team a score of -2. Now, as the series goes on, you will see that there does appear to be some cohesiveness between team success and these scores. So you'll get a good idea that -2 is one of the worst scores that I've assigned. Really poor job there. The main reason for this is the first round has been an absolute nightmare for the Browns. They've had more picks. I think we've still got 6 teams to do, but I believe the Browns have had the most first round picks in this time period with 13, 3 of which have become solid players. Only 3 in Joe Thomas, Alex Mack, who's no longer even with the team, and Joe Hayden. 8 of them have been busts. That's really impressive. 3 of them quarterbacks, but they've been at every position. They've made a lot of trades, moved about a lot, and then there's the last 2 first rounders I am undecided on. Well, 2 of the last 3. Cam Irving, I'm willing to say, is a bust at this point. So, having gone through this exercise, it's easy to see where the Browns have gone wrong. The first round, you have to nail the first rounders. One of the things, I'm going to give some of my conclusions at the end of the week in the weekly review, but one of the primary conclusions I've got from this is your first rounders have to hit more often than not. The teams that have done very well have either been great at finding value or have been consistent in the first round, or ideally a mix of both. Now, they've struggled to find value. 4 values, very average from the reviews I've done. 7 solid is a terrible total. Some teams will have close to that just from their first rounders, and they've had less of them. So really, it's quite clear where the issues have lied in Cleveland. Whether this is because of all the constant coaching changes, GM changes, leading to scheme changes, some of these players not having opportunities to learn one scheme and develop properly, or having their development hindered. That's certainly a viable thesis. But some of these picks have just been, clearly unmotivated players. I think there's been some clear issue with the scouting process where they have struggled to identify players who want to play in the NFL. If you've heard the stories about Justin Gilbert, the corner, he seems like a great example with the 8th overall pick to get absolutely nothing out of him. That's shocking. Johnny Manziel, clearly not focused enough on football. Both of them in the same draft. Trent Richardson, who just, I don't believe, cared nearly enough. These are shocking picks. And this really shows why the Browns are in the state they're in. I was considering giving this episode a subtitle, How to Build a Factory of Sadness, and that's before I even did this. This has just demonstrated it. This is how you have one of the worst franchises in professional football. Constant chopping and changing at the GM and head coaching position. Constant whiffing in the draft. It appears there's some issues in that scouting department with finding players who simply want to play football. I mean, this is damning as far as I'm concerned of this franchise. And when you analyse these picks, I think it's hard to argue with them. I think the analysis that I've come with, I haven't been overly harsh on the team. I've given them credit where it's due. It's apparent that this team has just been atrocious in the draft, and that has translated onto the field. I mean, in 10 years worth of drafting to come up with 11 valid contributors. 11. And this team's probably had as many picks as anybody else, most of them high up. It's a damning indictment of how poorly run this franchise has been. So that's the Cleveland Browns for you. Welcome to the Factory of Sadness. Whoever's going to be drafted first overall, I suspect Myles Garrett. It'd be nice to see them get somewhere in turn in this round, but I still feel like that is some way off. I mean, that decade win-loss percentage combines with that 48 and 112 is shocking. At the end of the week, in the weekly review, I'm gonna have like a league table basically, showing the teams that have scored the highest and having their win-loss records next to it. Hopefully that will really enlighten you guys as to what this system has shown us. And of course the Browns, that record is atrocious. No playoff appearances. This franchise is in a sad state, and this draft review has shown that is definitely a contributing factor in that. Well, thank you very much for listening, guys. If you enjoyed the show, feel free to get involved in discussion with myself. You follow me on Twitter. We've got the comment section below the Cover Zero Facebook page. Get on any of those. I'll do my best to get back to absolutely everyone. I think there's quite a lot you can potentially say on these. Do you feel I've been overly harsh or not given enough credit with regards to certain picks or the franchise as a whole? Any comments on the grading system? As I say, I've kept it very simple at this point. There is room for me to potentially expand that in future. What do you think of the Browns in general? Let me know. I'll do my best to get back to everyone. It's been a pleasure. Hoping to have the rest of the Northern divisions, both AFC and NFC, up today. Thank you very much for your time. Like, share, subscribe. Check out the Patreon, all that good stuff. It'd be thoroughly appreciated. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good day and go Bucks.